Hello and welcome to the program. I am Adeshewa Josh. Let's take you through major headlines around the world. As fighting continues in Iraq, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has arrived in the country's capital, Baghdad, to persuade politicians to get their acts together and strive to overcome sectarian differences. And this comes as Sunni insurgents expand their control of towns across northwestern Iraq. And reports say insurgents are trying to take control of a dam near the city of Haditha. Its destruction could damage the country's electrical grid. On Sunday, ISIS-led rebels captured border crossing to Syria and Jordan. The strategic importance of the airport in the northern town of Talifa has also fallen to the rebels.
Iraqi troops battle militants from the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant on Monday in Bakuba. But in Mosul, armed ISIS militants are seen patrolling the streets, directing traffic and handing out copies of the Muslim holy book, the Quran, to drivers as they drive through the city. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry landed in Baghdad on Monday to press Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki, a Shiite Muslim, to form a more inclusive government in response to the ISIS-led radical Sunni insurgency that has swept much of northern and western Iraq. Kerry's visit came after Sunni militants took strongholds along Iraq's western border at the weekend, strengthening supply routes from Syria, where they have exploited a 3-year-old rebellion to capture territories. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei on Sunday accused Washington of trying to regain control of the country it once occupied, a charge Kerry denied, saying the United States is committed to help in Iraq. Washington, which withdrew its troops from Iraq in 2011 after an 8-year occupation that followed the 2003 invasion that toppled dictator Saddam Hussein, has been struggling to help Iraq contain the insurgency.
Now, I am now being joined by Jeff Young of the Voice of America to discuss more about the crisis in Iraq. Thanks a lot for joining us, Jeff.
It's a pleasure, as always.
Now, analysts believe that Mr. Kerry's visit to Iraq is meant to persuade politicians across the board to rise above the sectarian and ethnic divide and come together to rescue their country. Do you see this happening, and will Mr. Kerry's visit make any difference at all?
Well, they have received from Secretary of State John Kerry and from other sources in the United States, including back channel from the White House, that the future of Iraq depends on an inclusive government, that Nouri al-Maliki or whoever forms the next government must reach out to all factions within the country. There can't be any other way to keep the country intact. But Kerry also said while he was there that the principal concern is the integrity of the country, its borders, and its security. So once again, it is a political solution that is inclusive. At the same time that he's calling on the Iraqi military to finally stand up and fight and get their territory back, and when they get it, to hold it. Just in the last 24 hours, we've had a number of setbacks. There have been several towns that have been taken. We also had Iraqi government forces pulling out from Haditha, which is about 270 kilometers north of Baghdad. You've heard about the borders being closed. There's also an attack that happened on a police convoy that was transporting prisoners from a town called Hilla, south of Baghdad, to a prison north of the city. At least 5 police officers were killed. 71 of the prisoners also died in that attack. He's met with other people besides Maliki. He met with Osama Nujafi, the Speaker of the Parliament, and all Shia and Sunni leaders. The point is, they have to come together or the country falls down. It has now become that basic and that urgent.
But will Secretary of State, U.S. Secretary of State's visit make any difference? The solution you proposed, will it make them come together to solve this politically?
You know, ultimately, it is up to the Iraqis. And I'm not washing my hands. Please understand what I'm saying here. Ultimately, as much as John Kerry or Barack Obama or even the Pope can tell them, you have to sit down and work this out and work together, it's really up to them. They have to find it in their hearts to say, it's either this or we have no Iraq. You would think that they would have come to this conclusion by now, but they're still fighting amongst themselves.
Right. Now, Iran earlier said it was ready to work with the U.S. to assist Iraq in defeating ISIS. But Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, over the weekend said he opposed any U.S. intervention in Iraq. Now, what effect will this have on the Iraqi crisis, and how can there be some kind of understanding between these two outside players?
Well, first of all, remember, the United States has said that it's only going to send a group of advisors. It started out as 100, and then when President Obama made his announcement, he raised it up to 300. This is not a U.S. intervention. This is not sending the U.S. Marines or the 101st Airborne of the U.S. Army to land on the ground, seize the